Hey guys, I'm sorry it's been a short while, but today I'm going to do some painting and I'm going to paint this corner cabinet behind me here. So this cabinet, let me show you. It is an Urquhart. It was probably made in the 60s. It's a nice mid-century modern piece. However, Urquhart is usually very collectible and it's very sought after, but only if it's blonde. Because it's sort of a dark oak colour, it just isn't moving. So often now that I have a little shop, I try and sell things unpainted before I paint them. But yeah, this is just not selling. So it is going to be painted because I am sick of looking at it. I'm going to mix myself a bit of a green to start with Dixie Belle's Terra Clay paint. And the two colours I'm going to mix to start with to make a bit of a green is Cerulean blue and Daffodil. So let's just see how this goes. I like to find random things that I can use for pouring rather than, ooh, this is thick. So this paint has been open a while and it has thickened a little bit. Sometimes I do like that because I like paints often to be as thick as possible. If your paint does get a little bit like that and you don't want it so thick, then you can just add a little bit of water to it. So I'm just going to pour some of this very gloopy. I'm actually going to make plenty of it because actually I've got the whole cabinet I want to paint and it may take 2 coats, so we'll see. Then I'm going to mix a bit of yellow. This isn't quite so gloopy. I'm going to do about 50-50 of each colour and just start to mix that and see what we get. Actually more blue than I want right now. It's creating a bit of a light teal colour actually. Do like it. I want it a little bit more green. So I'm going to add a bit more yellow, or a lot more yellow. Just going to keep adding yellow now until it's sort of a more green colour. I'm looking for quite a toned down green, like a bit olivey or a bit more like maybe on the teal side, but more of a green teal than a blue teal, if that makes sense. I don't know, let's just see what happens. But I am quite liking this colour actually. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. That's kind of the colour we've got so far. I'm just going to darken it up and tone it down ever so slightly. I think I'm weird, but I'm going to use this colour called Bougainvillea, which is a pink colour, and because this is on the opposite end of the colour wheel, what this means is that it will tone this down, I think. Let's see. So I'm going to add just the tiniest little bit like that, not a lot. We can always add more if need be, but obviously we can't take it away. Let's just see what happens when I add this to the mix. Might need a little bit more yet, we'll see. Add just the tiniest bit more pink. So I have another blob of pink in there. I'm just going to mix the rest of this in. So whenever you've got a really vibrant colour and you want to tone it down, a lot of people reach for white, but what white does is it just lightens it. It doesn't actually change the tone of the colour, if that makes sense. But if you go and use a colour on the opposite end of the colour wheel, then that's what tones the colour down. So you might be able to see now, it's more of a earthy, almost olivey colour, but not quite. So that has worked. I'm going to use the Big Daddy brush to paint this, okay? I feel like I might not have made enough, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to avoid... Am I going to avoid the panels? No, I'm going to paint the panels. I was going to avoid the panels, but I'm going to paint the panels. Am I painting the panels? Do I want to paint the panels? Do I want to paint the panels? No, I'm going to leave the panels. I'm going to leave the panels for now. Okay, so I'm going to leave the panels. Doesn't matter if I get a little bit of paint like in there, that's okay. But generally, I'm not going to be painting the panels in this colour, just the rest of the piece. It's more of a earthy minty green actually, this I would say. Earthy minty green, is that a thing? If it's not, it is now. thing that I want to add when I'm painting is that I'm encouraging brush strokes. I'm not looking for that perfectly smooth look. When it drags a little bit, that means it's kind of good because I'm getting those brush strokes, and I'm also going in different directions, and that's just to create some sort of texture and just make it look like there's more life to it. Like, I just don't want it to look completely perfect because then it's not going to be aged and rustic, if that makes sense. It's got to look like it's lived a life, or maybe 5 in this case. Right, so hang on, let me move that back a bit. Right, so we've got that first coat on. I really like this colour, and I kind of wish now it was my main colour rather than the one that I was going to put underneath. So there might be a slight change of plan, whereas before I was going to put this colour underneath and put a bunch of creams and whites or whatever on top. I now feel like that's going to be my main colour. However, I don't want it to be like a fully blocked out colour, so I'm still going to be doing some other bits to it, but I have put that colour to one side because I think I'm going to be using it again because I like it. But for the panels, for now, I've got a very white called Moonbeam. I've got a chip brush, and I'm literally going to, quite literally, and what I'm going to do is just stab this white in the panels here. And again, don't worry about being too perfect. What this is going to do is create a little bit of texture, especially because clay paint is quite a textured paint anyway. What I'm also doing here is adding the white over the custom green that I made, and I'm just very roughly painting it on, and it's almost like a dry brushing technique that I'm using as well. This is just going to provide another layer. Okay, it is definitely in some kind of weird crazy phase, like somebody's gotten toothpaste or something and smeared it all over. However, we're going to tidy it up now. I'm kind of just winging this, but because I love that original colour so much, I'm actually going to use that again, but I'm not going to completely cover the white. I'm going to more lightly just brush it over the top this time. I'm very lightly just going to brush over the top. I've had to make the colour again, and it's actually a little bit greener, but that's fine, it offers a bit of variation. I didn't make enough for 2 coats. So I'm not going to completely cover up the white. I want it to look a little scratchy, and these brushes are great for this because they're natural bristled, and there's a lot of bristles. And also I'm just going to do some little tapping movements in some areas just to, let's say, create that bit more interest. So on this panel here, I'm kind of just going to do the same. And I'm mostly going to cover up the white, but not completely. If I was going to do this again, I think what I do actually is I put a block colour on, like a whole block of this colour, and then I would actually probably water down the white, and I'd use the ragging technique where I then just create more of a wash rather than doing these kind of layers. But because I changed direction with this, that's why I'm doing it this way. Still looking a little crazy, but I will show you how I sort that out eventually again as well. I'm going to mix a colour for these panels now, and I'm going to mix a yellow and a white and a pink, I think, and it should make a bit of a light orange terracotta, the colour, I think. We'll see. So first up is Daffodil. I'm going to mix loads and loads because it's just going to be for those panels. And then Bougainvillea. I'm mixing a third of each, roughly. Okay. And some Moonbeam. And we'll just see how this turns out, I guess. Give it a mix. Actually making a bit of a coral colour. Made a lovely coral colour, not quite the colour that I want though. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more yellow and a little bit more white to this. Just in one of those moods today, guys, where I just want to, mess around with colours a little. Add some more white. To be fair, those kind of pastel pinks and greens can go well together. So if I do end up with a bit of a salmon colour rather than a coral, I'd be quite happy with that. So this is a nice colour. It's a little bit lighter. Made far too much now, to be fair. Oh, I love this colour. It's like a peach. Look at that. It's nice. I'm going to go a tiny bit more white. I want it quite light. It's quite pretty. It's like, I think it's like, I would say just a tiny bit of a, I would say it's a bit of a salmon colour, but it's quite light now. I'm using another chip brush for these panels. So let's just see what it looks like on here first. Okay. I'm going to put a tiny bit more white in there. I'm going to have no room in the dish in a minute. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I've nearly emptied this. So I'm going to pour it into here and then I can use it again once I'm done with it today. I'm going to put it next to that now. We'll see what difference it makes. That's much better. Much better. I'm going to have to blend it in with that now though. So I'm stippling again. Just gonna, every time I get some of the darker colour on my brush, I'm just going to wipe it off. And I'm just going to stipple that in. It is still looking crazy, guys, but bear with me. I'm going to do this now on the rest of the panels. So I'm going to do a bit of faux art now. And the first colour that I am using is Moonbeam. And I'm just going to roughly measure where the middle is. Somewhere around here. And I'm just going to pop a little mark there. It doesn't need to be perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little stroke like this. And one like this. I'm not using any particular brush for this. I'm actually using probably a very bad brush for this. So if I can do it with this brush, you can honestly do it with any brush. It's one that I got from a supermarket. It's not like a special faux art brush or anything. So my brush strokes won't be as good as they should be. One thing I will say is where you want it thicker is where you want to drag your brush down like that. So you want to kind of put it at the top like that, where it's a bit thick, and then just lighten off as you curve it around, because then you're going to get those faux art shapes. I'm going to be distressing this a lot, I think. So I'm not too worried about doing it so perfect as per usual. I'm not even worried if each panel is perfect, otherwise I would use some tracing paper. So it's really easy, I guess, to get it down to the perfect kind of faux art look. As I say, you need the proper brushes, but just for the sake of this piece today, I'm happy to just kind of be more organic about it. Swirl down here like this. And a swirl down here like that. Here. But I'm going to drag it up so it's thinner, thinner inside there, and then drag it up there as well. It's definitely not the right brush. Then at the bottom here, I'm kind of just going to go straight with my brush like that, then a little bit upwards, a little bit thinner, straight again. Every time I go down, I'm going a little bit thinner, down, inwards, down, outwards a bit further, up, and then I'm just going to copy that. Just going to continue that on like that. You struggle with your paint in terms of it, because clay paint's quite a thick paint and it's not moving as much as you would like. You can always spray a little bit of water, but just make sure you don't spray too much, because otherwise the paint can reactivate. Far too much paint there, it's okay, I'll sand it off. I'm far too blasé, I think, sometimes about these things. I should not be so blasé. Do, 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 do. Like just like that, and then on the top I'm going to copy the exact same thing, but I'm going to flip it around a little. So instead of going downwards, I'm going to go douche. You got to make the sound effects as you do it as well. The reason why I don't always worry so much is simply because I often end up sanding back a lot of my pieces, so all that detail sometimes gets lost anyway. If I wasn't making it into a rustic piece, I would definitely be paying more attention, just so you know. I've got some Marigold now. This is an orange colour, and I'm just going to go around the edge with this to start with. Again, gonna look crazy, and it's fine. Do not worry. I will bring it all together. Have faith. With a dark colour called Galaxy, it's like a navy blue. And I'm just gonna go around the edge of the orange very roughly. The brushes I'm using again are just cheap supermarket brushes. See, you know, don't worry too much, don't get caught up in the brushes with this piece, because it really doesn't matter that much. Okay, so I'm going to do every panel like that now. After I'd finished all the panels, I then started sanding. I'm just using 120 grit sandpaper, and I'm sanding over the top of the panels, and then I will also sand across the rest of the piece as well. I want this to look really rustic, so I am completely happy for some of the wood to start to peek through, as well as the other layers of paint. I just want it to look really old and faded. Next, I used a colour called Van Dyke Brown Glaze by Dixie Belle, and sometimes what can happen to your glazes is that they can separate just because they're water based. If this happens, all you need to do is give your glaze a really good stir just to get the water mixed back in with the pigment. I then mixed my glaze in a bowl with a 50-50 solution of water to glaze, and gave it a really good stir, because you don't want uneven clumps of glaze in there. I then applied my glaze over the furniture, but I worked in sections, so I started with one of the panels and then I'll work my way across the whole piece. But because this is kind of time sensitive, you don't want to paint the whole thing in glaze and then have it dry. Also, the glaze that I made was a little bit too thick, so I would actually add a little bit of extra water if need be. That's why I'm spraying a little bit of water here. So once I've done that, I scrunch up some newspaper and I then apply it over the top of the glaze. And this technique that I'm using is a mixture of frottage and also ragging. So this is frottage, where you put the paper over the top of the glaze and it creates this kind of distress pattern. But if there are any little parts that I'm not happy with, I'm just going to go in and tap that, and that technique is then called ragging. So all I'm doing here is I'm just creating some age to this. The brown is kind of going to look like the piece has gotten really dirty and aged over time, and it's just going to be very rustic and a little bit grungy as well. So this look is definitely going to be a very unique and a very rustic one. Just remember that this is meant to look aged, so I know I say this in every video that I do like this, but remember you not to get too perfect about it and too caught up in the detail. I then followed the exact same process for the rest of the piece, again working in sections, and this is going to go from a very, very pretty pastel-y, almost sickly piece to what I'm going to call very grungy and cottagey, like if Alice in Wonderland was in dystopia or something like that. Going to add a layer of clear wax first, and I'm going to work in sections. I'm using an oil-based wax for this. Because Terra reacts with water, like it'll reactivate, you need to make sure that you use a wax that's not water-based. Now I'm using a black wax, and I'm going to focus this mostly on the edges and just make it look even dirtier and older and grungier. The reason it's a good idea to put the clear wax on first is because then it will act as a foundation for decorative wax that you put on over the top, which means if you feel like you've put too much of the say the dark wax on, you can then just wipe it off with clear wax because it's sitting on top of the clear wax. So the clear wax will soak into the furniture first, and then afterwards the dark wax will sink in, if that makes sense. But if you put the dark wax on first, that's going to sink straight into the paint, which means then you can't remove it. So like I've put a lot of on there that I'm not sure about, so I'm going in with my clear wax now, and I'm just going to just soften that a little bit. If you even get a lint-free rag, you can then just peel it straight off, but I'm just going to blend it a little bit instead. And here is the finished look. I really enjoyed working on this piece. I loved taking something that was meant to be so pretty with pretty girly colours and just really grunging it up. I feel like this should be called cottage grunge, or maybe even, can granny grunge be a thing? No, I'm just joking. But it was really fun, and I just love that it looks like even a tiny bit dystopian now, like just really rustic. Did you guys enjoy this makeover? Then let me know in the comments, and if you create a look like this or that has been inspired by this, please as always send me photos, and have an amazing time painting.